Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant and this is Everspace. It's a game by Rockfish and it was released today into alpha. You can see down there in the bottom right hand corner that it says alpha build. So as to be expected, that means this is a very early version of this game and there's going to be a whole lot more coming over the coming weeks and months. So what is Everspace? Well, it's a roguelike space shooter with persistent progression. What does that mean exactly? Well, as with all the roguelikes, if you die, it's game over, you're right back to the beginning again. But the persistent progression on this means you're able to retain all your upgrades. Now you can see here there's a star map, this is the first sector, and it's a little bit like FTL if you've ever played that. You complete one area and then progress on to the next. However, the areas aren't entirely about combat, there are some other things to do. As you can see here, I'm shooting an asteroid and collecting resources from it. That's for fuel in this case, and I'll get on to what that's needed for in a bit. But there's also cargo containers around, as well as freight ships and a whole bunch of other things that you can opt to attack and destroy as well, and you'll collect resources from them, all usable for various things. Those things range from fuel to enable you to keep jumping from sector to sector, to nanos that enable you to repair your ship, and other resources that allow you to perform upgrades. Now there are essentially two types of upgrades. One is crafting, that's not persistent. It gives you simple boosts that you can gain whilst you're playing. The other type of upgrades requires credits. You get credits from destroying enemies and you can also collect them as they're scattered around the environments. I'll get to a bit more on upgrades in just a bit, but the meat of the game really is the combat here. It's extremely fast paced, and to be honest it's going to take me a little bit of time to get used to this sort of thing. It's been a while since I've played this type of combat, but it looks like it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. And you can see it's very visceral here. It's a lot going on, very visually appealing, beautifully looking game. You've got your shields up there in the top left hand corner, and you've got your hull just below that. Now this was one of the first combat sessions I got involved in, and when your shield's down it will recharge, but it does take a little while to do that. Your hull can absorb a little bit of damage, but once you lose that it's game over. The ship is basically outfitted with two types of weapons. One is a gun of some type and the other is missiles. Missiles are able to do a lot of damage, and for the most part they're auto-aiming so long as you've got your target selected. And just look at those explosions there, absolutely lovely. The guns I find a little bit harder to use because obviously you've got to lead your target a little bit, and at the speed of this it takes a little bit of doing. Flying is done with mouse and keyboard, and basically the ship follows a cursor, so you aim with the cursor there and your ship will automatically follow that. You can also fly with a controller as well. So it's definitely a very arcadey space shooter, but that's the aim and it performs that very well. So each area has a few enemies within it, and once you've defeated them you can choose what you want to do next. You can repair your ship or do a few upgrades there on the equipment tab. Check your progress on the various other tabs as well. Each of the early sectors doesn't have too much in the way of enemies, but you can certainly make more enemies there if you want. There are some friendly installations there, some friendly space stations and friendly freighters as well. And if you attack some of them you will get some additional resources, but it will also make them hostile towards you as well. And as you explore the sector that you're in, you can also find some additional resources. Now you've got to weigh up the pros and cons of this. You spend a lot of time doing this, but the more time you spend looking, the more resources you'll get, and you'll be therefore better prepared for the further sectors. When you die though, you're put back to the hangar and you have to start from the first sector again. But you can see here that I've got 1,500 credits, relatively small amount of money, but it allows me to perform some unlocks here. Each of these unlocks comes with multiple tiers. I'll unlock tier 1, it will allow me to then unlock tier 2, but in addition to that it will open up additional functions for me to unlock. You can see there's a whole load of empty boxes that will no doubt contain many other upgrades for my ship. This is the area of the game that has persistent progression. All the unlocks you do here you'll get to keep every time you die, which of course will enable you to be more powerful and therefore enable you to get further into deeper sectors within the game. So here are some of the friendly installations that I was talking about, and I wanted to see what happened if I decided to attack some of these nodes on there. They obviously contained resources of some type, and it turned out they had fuel, something that would be very beneficial later on into the game, because every time you jump from sector to sector it burns up some of your fuel, and you need to keep up increasing that fuel to enable you to go further into the game. But you can see here that by attacking this station, it's now turned hostile towards me. It's got some missile silos on here, and they can do quite some significant damage to my ship. But at this point it turned out to be not that much of a problem, as those silos, for now at least, were relatively easy to deal with. Further into the game, where there's more silos, they can be a significant problem, where you get missile after missile. Again, it brings you back to the old problem of staying in the sector to try and build up some more resources, or moving on. But when it is time to move on, you simply aim your ship towards the exit node and it charges up, and then it goes into warp, bringing you to the sector map. You can then choose which area you want to move to next, some of them more difficult than others, and finally you launch into a new environment. There are a whole ton of different environments, and the ship has a fantastic damage model. I'll be taking a much closer look at all that, as well as everything else in this game, in another video over the coming days. For now though, this is just an initial look at the game. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.